Welcome to the first interview of Season 4 for the Perfect Par podcast. It is incredible to think that this is my fourth year hosting this podcast, and thank you to all who listen. I really enjoy creating these podcasts, and I hope you find valuable insights in the episodes. This season I made a few changes. Essentially, I will be posting full-length video episodes on my website and posting shorter 10 to 15 minute clips on the podcast feed on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now on to today's interview. I was lucky enough to be able to talk with flow state expert and Collin Morrikowa's longtime coach, Rick Sessinghaus. Rick and I talk about the critical steps to improvement, including finding the right coach for you, goals, development plans, the mental game, flow, and so much more. If you want insights from one of the best coaches and psychologists in the game, this episode is for you. So without further ado, here's episode 1 with Rick Sessinghaus. Rick, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I want to first hop right in and talk about coaching. You've coached for a while, and I think a coaching relationship for a golfer is one of the most important, if not the most important relationship they have. What is your advice for up-and-coming golfers to find the right coach for them to help them get to the next level?
It's a great question because I think we have to define a little bit more of teaching and coaching, right? So I've been doing both of those for 28 years, and originally it was teaching, right? I had information with a golf swing and I wanted to help my student get better at their golf swing. I would teach them the proper mechanics and so on and so forth. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. Coaching is a little bit of a different element because I believe coaching has a lot to do with the relationship of the student and the teacher. So I've
Mm-hmm.
evolved into a coach, which it's more about, I believe, looking at the entire player, in this case, a golfer, than it is just the golf swing. So that's grown that a little bit. And I look at coaching as also the responsibility of the student. I have a responsibility as a coach. I will help you. Hey, let's talk about this. Let's do this. Let's that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the student has a responsibility to train and to do what's been asked of them. And I think coaching, when we talk about coaching, there's an interactive element of checking in and questions and a game plan. I think when I was a teacher, it was
Mm-hmm.
here's a one golf lesson, see you maybe later, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. And from a perspective of trying to find the best coach for you, yeah, you're going to get that through referrals. You're going to get like, oh, but have to meet the person, right? You have to get their energy.
Right.
You have to get who they are. And I think, and we may talk about it later, but I think golf specifically is the coaching realm is changing a little bit to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
specialization. And so as a player gets more advanced, usually they're looking at more specialty coaches. And nothing wrong with that, everybody. But if you're a 12-year-old, I don't necessarily think you're going to need 7 coaches on your staff.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're not on the PGA or LPGA tour yet. Okay, uh, but it is finding somebody who knows you, who has your best interest at heart, and and I don't think this is talked about enough, but it has fun. You have to have fun. When you're having fun and enjoying the process, you'll actually learn at a higher rate. And so find somebody with personality that matches. It's not just do this, do that, right? So I think finding a coach is a lot about personality styles, but let's not ignore they've got to be good at what they do, right? And they have to have some experience. When I started off the first few years, I was below average because
Yeah.
I was making a lot of mistakes as a coach. I'm 28 years into it. I still make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I've minimized those mistakes. I've learned by working with thousands of players what to do. So you'd want a coach probably has a little bit of experience going in
Yeah.
there, but those would be some of my suggestions.
Yeah. So once you've found this coach, ideally it's somewhat of a long-term relationship. What are some of the keys in your mind to maintaining a good relationship and clear communication with your coach through highs and lows?
Another great question. So I think the as the player gets older, I believe they need to take more responsibility for that coach-student relationship. I've certainly I don't do it anymore, but when I used to teach 8, 9, 10-year-olds, it was mostly 99% coach, 1% student, right? The 8, 9-year-old does, this is new to them. Okay. Like that. But as you get 15, 16, you're playing national events, it starts to become more 50-50. You need to ask of your coach more than just being told what to do. And you need to give feedback. And whether it's a text, whether it's an email, whether it's whatever form is best for you, there has to be the responsibility of the player to give feedback, not just, well, I hope coach asks me about this next week when I see him.
Yeah.
That might be too late in the process. As you become more advanced, I think getting feedback quicker is helpful. But please respect your coach. Your coach has 40, 50, 60, sometimes more other students. They are getting pulled from a lot of different directions also. So please don't send a text and expect the coach to get back to you within 3 minutes. Have some boundaries, understand that they're busy, but if you can create those boundaries, where I do with some of my clients, where after a tournament I have a little bit of a window. Hey, reach out to me. Let's talk for 5 minutes about how the tournament went. Let's talk, let's text me what our plan is. I'm definitely open to that, but I want the student to take a lot more of that responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So this kind of ties in with what you mentioned a little bit earlier with the specialization of different golf coaches. But I'm interested to hear what you think, what role tech should play in golf coaching.
It definitely should play a role. It's how it's used and communicated that is the key part.
Mm,
As a coach, we know what we can measure, we can improve. If
hmm.
we're not measuring it, then we're guessing. And so that's where all the techie people out there, that's what they want to say. I have found that some coaches are just relying, and I'm going to call them actually teachers, not coach,
Yeah.
teachers that are just relying on tech to give the golf lesson. Oh,
Mm,
your TrackMan number is 5 degrees into out. Swing more to the left.
yeah.
Okay. But a coach would want to know what the cause and effect of why they were underplaying to begin with. And maybe it's the right elbow at the top and you're not picking that up and you're just relying on the tech to do that. That's a big no no. Okay.
Right.
And so that's where I am a little bit old school, in that a coach should understand causes and effects without a TrackMan,
Hmm.
and such, because you're looking at what created that ball flight. We certainly can take the data of the club face was 5 degrees into out and the club face was closed 3 on that path. Of course, it's going to hook. Stop hooking it. Or it's like, okay, why don't we look at what caused that? And I think when you have somebody who has a lot of actually experience without tech,
Hmm.
that might be a benefit also. And along those lines is you have to be careful as a player now, is how much down the rabbit hole of tech do you want to go? Because I don't think that always leads to a better player. You may have a pretty good a very pretty golf swing you put on Instagram and get all your likes and stuff. That doesn't mean you can shoot lower scores than the person
Mm,
to the side of you. So last thing I checked is that you don't get bonus points for a pretty golf swing or TrackMan numbers. You are It's outcome based, right? Who's shooting the lowest score is really what it's about.
yeah. So, what role should a player's personality type and kind of the way they think play into, how they work on their swing and how they develop with their coach?
Yeah, so I use something called athletes assessment, which is a disc profile, which is used in business a lot, but this one happens to be specific for sports. So I'm familiar with personality styles and behavioral styles. And let me just give you 4 examples, okay? And these are, again, more extreme. So please, everybody out there, you're a mixture of a lot of these. Okay. So one we call high D, which is dominance. That's somebody who is going to play fast, very goal driven, not necessarily a people person per se, but very goal driven, right? Uh, and that would be a Brooks Koepka. Okay. A Brooks Koepka is very going to play fast, knows what he wants, goes out and gets it, so on and so forth. Then you have what we call a high I influence type person, who that would be a Rory McIlroy. He's plays fast, more of a people person, bounce to his step, a little bit more outgoing with the press. You can tell that. He will like to play fast, but he'll be a little bit more people person. Then you
Hmm.
have an S, which would be a steadiness. So that would be a Collin Morrikowa, who's going to be probably a little calmer to the outside looking in, does things in a deliberate fashion. Still is a people person, still doesn't mind being around people, but it's not as goal like Brooks Koepka. And then you have a C, which is conscientiousness, which is a Bryson DeChambeau, who's going to be more analytical, more of a perfectionist, more slower in how he not slower that he processes it. He just wants to take more time
Mm.
to be able to bring all those things in. Again, pace of play, he'll be slower. Not necessarily a people person. He'll be goal driven. So those would be 4 different personality styles. Now, when it comes to practice, it's an interesting one. A Bryson DeChambeau will love to be on a driving range hitting 5,000 7-irons in a row to try to get a
Yeah.
perfect TrackMan number or whatever number. That's fine. That works really, really, really well for him. It does
Hmm.
not work for Collin Morrikowa. He would prefer to be out on the golf course and prefer to be creative, hit different golf shots, and that fits him. Now they've both won major championships, so who's to know what's better,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
But you do need to know who you are to what helps you. And then I think like a Brooks Koepka would want to have very, very clear goals in his practice session. He'd want to get things done in an efficient way. Boom, boom, here's my goal. Let's go get it done, right? So everybody's going to be a little different, but usually it's about how analytical someone is, because that's going to
Hmm.
affect their practice sessions, or how creative they are. Do they like to be in solitude, or do they like to be around other people? So there are some different tools in there, but that's a 5-hour podcast for us to talk about.
Yeah. Is there an online resource where you could take a test like that, or is that more of a self-analysis type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, and if people reached out to me, this is part of what I do is I am certified through this company to administer those type of reports. It's a 44-page report, and it's specific for the athlete, and then we have one
Hmm.
that's for the coach too, because a coaching
Okay.
style, my style is high I, so energetic, people person, like to get to know you, those type of things. And yet other coaches are going to be more to the point, not very emotional per se, just boom to the point, right? So
Right.
we have these assessments for both coaches and players.
Yeah. So talking a little bit more about development, and I think goals, like you mentioned, could be, are a big part of that. What role should goals play when you're, you know, working on your way to becoming a better golfer?
Goals have been proven over and over and over and again to be very advantageous for performance. Now, how they're done is what we're going to talk about right now. I look at it as 3 basic buckets. We have an outcome goal, we have performance goals, and we have process goals underneath it. I may be different than other coaches out there. I want people to get excited about their outcome goals. I want them to be able to say them. I want them to be able to be very, very clear. My outcome goal is to be a Rolex All American for AJGA. My goal is to get a full ride scholarship to University of Tennessee, whatever it may be. Those are an outcome goal. Now what that can help us do is it helps build in motivation, and we're focused. So goals create focus as long as they're correctly put down, um, and it helps us now create a plan. Well, most people stop maybe at outcome goal. Oh, I want my scoring average to be 72. That's a great goal, by the way. Scoring average, that's consistency.
Hmm.
But then after that, they just forget about it and they put it away in their notes section on their phone or something like that. How are you going to get to the 72 average is the
Hmm.
question now, which is performance based. So let's use that as an example. Let's say currently a listener, their average is 75. They're a good
Yeah.
player, but oh, wow, they want to get down and their average to be 72. Great. Let's say within 18 months. Now, for a
Yeah.
junior golfer, that's possible. It is. A lot of work is going to be needed, but
Hmm.
I would want somebody to define how are they going to get 3 shots from. Just play better
Uh,
golf? Is that I'm just going to play better golf?
yeah.
No, you need to understand where are the 3 shots that I need to improve upon. It might be half a shots with driving. It might be uh, strokes gained approach shots. It might be wedges. It might be putts, putt rate from 5 to 8 feet that I need to improve by 12% to get. I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole of stats, which I think are fine as long as those are
Hmm.
used to help frame practice plans. Which is like, hey,
Hmm.
I need to improve by 3. I'm losing, 1.5 strokes on putting per round. That's probably a low hanging fruit to work on. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Beyond that, though, let's use putting as an example. And so let's just keep it simple that you're losing one shot per round with putting. You would want to now drive that even more. It's like, well, what about putting do I need to improve? Is it start line? Is my ball not even starting a line? Is it speed control? Is it reading greens? Is it mindset? I mean, and now we get, or is it just, no, Rick, I don't have any three putts, which is great, but my 5 to 8 foot range, my conversion is where I'm getting it. Now we know specifically what to work on. Wow. Now we're getting somewhere, right? And then it goes down to, okay, if let's say it's start line, I'm going to do some mirror work. I'm going to do some club face control, right hand only, left hand. Now we're actually have a plan as we go to the range and the putting green. So listeners out there, I know you put a lot of time in. I get it. Most of you don't know how to practice. So you have zero plan, zero clue, and zero focus. And then we expect to get better. So I go outcome goals first. We want to know specifically what we can measure. It helps motivation, but then underneath that, performance. What are the performance factors that need to improve to get me to that goal? Some of it could be, hey, I want to generate 3 more mile-an-hour club head speed. I have to go to the gym. I have to do speed stick training. I have to, great. Or, you know what? I find I get really nervous playing golf. I need to hire Rick Sessinghaus to help me with my mental game so I can be composed, confident, and ready to go and committed. Great. So then we lead to what's in my control week in, week out, day to day. That's where we get into more of the plans. I'm going to do my mirror drill with my putting for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to work on my fundamentals with eyes over the ball. I'm going to work on club face going down. I mean, now we're getting really, really narrow to a goal. That's
Right.
good. That helps us stay focused throughout.
Right. And you mentioned, most people don't know how to practice effectively. What would you say your keys to effective practice are?
Well, first off is to clarify what the heck am I practicing and why. Just going to hit balls on a range is not a good enough why. Me going to the range to shrink my dispersion rate. So then from 100 yards, I average 19 feet instead of 24 feet. And I notice that most of my misses are short right because I tilt too much with my shoulders and my club face is open. Now we got to cause and effect. Now you're working with your coach to say, hey, how can I minimize that? Oh, I need to stay more level. I'm going to do some feet together drills. I'm going to do some left foot back drills. Now we have a specific plan. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg though with the practice is then we want to be able to look at there's technical practice. We're going to put that under block practice right now. Have it clear. This is the drill I'm doing and why. Great. Then I think there should be some level of variability in practice. Okay. I'm going to hit my wedge now. We just talked about, and instead of just hitting it on a range mat, I'm going to hit it off grass, and then I'm going to hit it out of a divot, then I'm going to hit it out of a flyer lie, and then now we have variability because golf is a variable sport, everybody. It's not on a track, man. And we then go into even more performance-based stuff. I am going to hit 10 random shots to that 100-yard target, measure each one of them and see what my average is. That's what our goal was, wasn't it? To improve our dispersion. Might as well measure it in practice. And then the final way is through pressure. I'm not leaving this range until I hit 5 balls inside 7 feet from 100 yards. If I don't do it, I got to keep going. So there's a time consequence, or there can be. So we create some pressure, some competitive side of this that I don't think enough players do also. So we got blocked, we got random, we got performance, and we got pressure.
Okay. So how do you really measure your performance in that practice session? Or do you more look at the performance on the golf course as indicative of your practice?
Well, I think most people do it that way, which unfortunately they're not catching it quick enough. So I'm working on my putting, and then the next round, my putting stats don't change. Oh my gosh, oh my god, and that's not working. Well, that's only one round, so please don't. That's not a pattern of performance yet. But in that week, if you did, and I'm just throwing out a quick drill, a 10-ball drill from 8 feet, and you put 10 balls in a circle around 8 feet, and you kept going only 4 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 4 out of 10. I'm not saying that's bad. Tour average is 5 out of 10, but you can now measure, am I actually getting better at that skill or not? But if it
Yeah.
was 2 out of 10, 2 out of 10, and then magically I'm supposed to putt better during the tournament, good luck. So we can measure throughout practice. I think that is a good thing of TrackMan is the combines and some of the things that are there I think are fantastic because they are randomized, they are gamifying it, you're measuring it. And from, I'm not saying you should do that weekly, but let's say monthly, you can check in with your wedge combine, your iron combine. I think that's fantastic. You can create your own combines with short game and stuff. So you are measuring performance during practice.
Okay. So, how many rounds do you think you should play before you start to identify trends versus, one-off rounds?
Uh, I mean, I don't have an exact answer because there's so many variables, but let's say it's
Of course.
five. Let's say it's
Okay.
five. And why I say that is that so I get the PGA Tour stats, and it's interesting when you look at trends. Is you may have 4 rounds during that week. Well, that was played on somewhat obviously the same golf course, probably similar weather conditions, so on and so forth. It gets interesting when you're trying to compare one week to a next week where it's across the country, the weather's changed, the greens are
Hmm.
now Bermuda instead of bent. That's where it gets a little tricky because it's not always apples to apples. But I think for the player out there listening right now, I think 5 rounds is a good marker.
Yeah. For most of my listeners, they're pretty good golfers. Most of them average, mid 70s all the way to low 70s. How should they balance their practice on the range and on the golf course?
I don't want to go down like the personality thing much, but I would say most players are not spending enough time on the golf course. I, Being Collin Morikowa's coach, and when I was coaching him as a youngster, I mean, I started with him when he was 8 years old. Most of our golf lessons were done on the golf course. Most of his practice was done on a golf course. And it was a lot of variability practice. It was like, here's, let's hit 3 tee shots here. Let's hit 3 approach shots. Let's hit them. So he had a ton of variability and randomness.
Mhm.
And I believe that's what led to a very high, what I'll call golf IQ. If we're just going to stand on a range, you may have a good looking golf swing, but you may not be able to make great decisions because you don't know what this lie is going to do and what this firmness of this green and the wind coming from the right is going to affect it. Um, I'm encouraging junior golfers to be on the golf course much more in practice, and make mistakes. Encourage yourself to make mistakes, experiment, learn things from a decision making standpoint, because it also could be a mechanical thing. It could be, I don't know how to get out of the rough from 180 yards when the ball's sitting down. Do I go hybrid? Do I open up a 5 iron? I got to talk to my coach about this. But if only your practice is done on a range, I think you're limiting yourself to become a complete player. So I don't have a ratio like 50-50 or anything like
Yeah.
that. I just think as you evaluate your tournament rounds is be honest with yourself of, huh, why am I shooting the scores I'm shooting? And is it purely mechanical? Or is there decision making stuff? Is there certain shots you don't know how to play that cost you? So just be honest with yourself. And then I think that's going to help you create a better practice plan moving forward.
Yeah. And when you do practice on the golf course, what are some recommendations you have for drills or different ways to develop your game that aren't necessarily just playing a round of golf?
Well, my favorite one that I've mentioned many, many times is it's a 3 ball drill basically. So when I coach, even to this day, when on a playing lesson, I will put a golfer in a spot and I'll put a ball down, just random. Here's the ball. Here's your approach shot, and I will ask the player to define exactly what they plan to do. Well, Rick, it's playing 152. The wind's coming here. I'm going to hit a 8 iron. And I go, great. And then I get very specific with them. Where's it starting? All that. I get very, very specific. Okay. So let's say they hit the 8 iron. The second ball goes down. I said, okay, now that you've hit the shot, would you do anything different strategy wise? They go, no, I think it's the right club. I just tugged it. It was a physical error. Or no, I hit it great. I'm going to do it again. Okay. So I let them have the second shot as what they can learn from. Maybe they
Hmm.
make a different decision. Maybe they grip down and hit a fade. Great. I'm encouraging them to be involved with their decision making. And then the third one, and this is when I'm there, is I present my solution to that. Hey, have you ever thought about gripping down on a 7 iron and hitting it here? And oh, I never thought about that. Or did you know that that ball's actually in more of a flyer lie? Maybe we need. And this is not a ton about technical stuff, but it's more about decision making. It's more about learning the environment. So on the golf course, I encourage at least 2 balls, if not 3, from the same spot. And you're always, it's called pattern recognition. You're always had a feedback loop going, now that I hit that shot, what did I learn? What do I do differently? Oh, that was perfect. Or no, I would do it this way. Or get creative. I'm going to hit this chip shot low, medium, and high. Great. So there's many, many ways we can do it, but the 3-ball drill is my favorite one.
Yeah. So, what are some of the biggest differences you see in practice from elite amateurs to people on tour?
I mean, it goes back a little bit to a game plan. I mean, these players on tour, they practice a lot, don't get me wrong, but they don't like to waste time at all. So they go out there and this is what we're working on. We're done. Let's go. There's no need to add more. It's just we got our stuff done. I think the college players I work with, they have good work ethics. Don't get me wrong. The time they put in is pretty good, but they really don't have anything to show for it because I don't think they have a focused plan. Like as we discussed earlier, they don't have any feedback after the fact of did they assess is this getting better or not. And then
Hmm.
during the practice, I don't think they're as focused. I think they may be, and this is not a bad thing when you're practicing with your teammates because I think that's part of college golf, high school golf, and stuff. But can it distract so much that you're not fully engaged in the shots that you're hitting? That would be my only argument on that. So have a game plan. I don't think most amateurs do, even higher level ones, by the way. They just have a lot of talent
Yeah.
um, and they waste a lot of time when they're there.
Yeah. So, I want to talk a little bit now about the mental game and the mental side of golf. So, just, to get us started, what do you think some of the fundamentals of the mental game are?
Sure. So to me, the mental game is about state management, mental, emotional, and physical state management as you execute a golf shot. Okay. And so it's a performance state is what we're looking at. If I, was talking to all your listeners in front of them at a seminar, I ask 3 basic questions. Is the mental game of golf important? Everybody raises their hands. Yes. Do you train the mental game? I rarely get anybody who raises their hand. Yes. It's usually no. And then the third question, which is basically what you're asking, is what is the mental game? Because in order to train something, you have to quantify what it is. And
Hmm.
that has been a challenge is like, is the mental game positive thinking? Is it don't have a
Yeah.
bad attitude? It could be all of those things. It could be. And that's what's great about the mental game is I think there are many, many, many skills in this. So I get back to state management. How do you want to be over the ball, mentally, emotionally, physically? How do you want to be over the ball? Not many people ask themselves that. Now they know what they don't want, which is fear and nervousness and stress, but they're not very clear on what they want. So I look at the big 3 of focus, confidence, and emotional regulation as the big 3. Focus is the number 1 skill because it all starts with your ability to pay attention to the present moment. Confidence is do you actually believe you can hit the shot in front of you? And then emotional regulations, both before and after a golf shot. How are you reacting? How are you priming yourself for this? Because that's all going to affect your grip pressure and your timing and your decision making. That's mental. Okay. And, I've gone down the rabbit hole of something called flow stage, which is optimal experience. You play your best, you feel your best. It's less brainwave activity. There's more coherence between the mind and the heart. I mean, there's a lot of things that we have now quantified of what a flow state is, but it all starts with focus. What am I paying attention to right now that's relevant? And then confidence. Do you actually believe you have the skills to match the challenge in front of you? And then the emotions is I would ask all your listeners when you play your best golf, how do you feel? My word's engaged. I feel engaged. Other people, it's creative. Other people, it's excited. Other people, it's relaxed. But I don't think people are practicing that. They hope they play well, and then once they start playing well, then they're in a good attitude. Oh yeah, Rick. Now I go, yeah, okay. Now when you made double double on the first 2 holes, are you in that great attitude? Probably not. So we look at post shot routines, we look at pre shot routines, pre round routines. Routines is a word I know that's thrown around a lot with the mental game, but I don't believe people practice those routines or why are they doing them in the first place.
Yeah. So, how do you practice those routines and improve your skill set at those 3 main parts of the mental game?
Sure. So focus is, what am I paying attention to in the present moment? A lot of people have a pre-shot routine and say, yeah, Rick, I do that. And I go, oh, great. And then I'm in a practice setting with them, and I throw a ball down and I say, what's your decision, right? And they use their little laser and it says 148 yards, and then they pull out their 9-iron and they hit a shot and it's 12 yards short. And I go, why did you hit that? Well, it said 148. I go, there's wind into you. It's uphill. It's a cold morning. The ball is sitting down, and I mean, they weren't paying attention to all the relevant cues in that. That's just one example. Again, you golfers out there, you're missing a lot. Okay. Now, the issue also, the opposite of focus, is being distracted, right? I'm distracted by swing thoughts and people watching, all that stuff. But my favorite way of training focus is by asking better questions. How is this lie going to affect the ball? Where is the wind coming from? How firm is this green? What's my front yardage? What's the carry? Those are all questions that are going to pose you to have to pay attention to an answer. Okay. So focus starts with asking better questions. Okay. We then go into confidence. Confidence is an interesting one because it is a skill. When I ask people, where does confidence come from? They go, when I hit good shots. I go, great, just keep hitting good shots and you'll be confident. And you know I'm a smart butt here, but the issue is we don't always hit good shots. So where else are we going to get that from? And this is my quick rundown, but past results. If you've done it before, you can do it again.
Hmm.
Visualizing success in the moment, how we carry ourselves posturally, practice and preparation. Those are things that help can build confidence. Doing the hard things day in and day out will build confidence. But in the moment, probably what I work on with the most with competitive players is their self-talk. What are they saying to themselves in that 2 seconds right before they hit a ball? Pretty important.
Right.
Your self-talk, those thoughts, if repeated enough, create belief systems, and those belief systems are going to run the show. So we want to be very aware of our self-talk. I think is very important. But there's other building blocks for confidence. Emotions is an interesting one. Is the after the result, I think is a great learning opportunity for people. Good players tend to have very high expectations, and when they hit a poor golf shot, they don't meet those expectations, which usually leads to frustration. Okay. So frustration now is an emotion. Do we want to stay frustrated to the next shot? Well, of course not. If I did, which I did in college, by the way, it would cause focus issues. It would cause decision errors. It cause tension in my body. It would make my grip pressure get increased. It would make me swing faster. So if I ask the listeners, do you have a post-shot routine? Most would look at me and go, what the heck are you talking about, Rick? I just try to forget about it, or I slam my club a few times, or those are post-shot routines, certainly. I want people to learn from their shots without being critical. Why did the ball go where it went? And if it went great, anchor it. Man, that was awesome. That was great, Rick. Keep doing that, right? If it's a shot that would have frustrated you, how do you process it differently is what we're talking about. We're talking about, why did that ball go where it went? Most people will just blame the golf swing. I'm biased. I think it's mental. I think it could be a lack of commitment to the shot. I think it could be too many swing thoughts. It could be a fear of don't go right. It could be a host of things that could cause the golf swing now to change because their mindset and their state was interfered with. So those are the big three, and there's different things off the golf course with mindfulness and visualization, and there's all kinds of things that we could do to help build those up.
Yeah. So you mentioned flow state, and you've done a lot of research into that. Can you tell everyone a little bit about what the flow state is, and also your company you've built, FlowCode, and how that could help them in their golf?
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah. So flow has been now researched for over 40 years, but really a lot in the last 10 years. It comes from a professor by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who unfortunately passed away last year. And there was something called the positive psychology movement, which was basically the psychologists now studying what creates excellence instead of what's wrong with people, what's right with people. And that's where the flow training and flow research started to come out of. So fast forward now to the last 5 years, where research of brainwave activity and neurochemistry has all improved because we can measure, back to the measurement stuff, of what this state is. Well, the flow state is a state that has less brainwave activity happening. So there's a lot less going on upstairs. We are completely absorbed in the present moment. That's why I always start with focus with everybody. Be in this moment is where flow starts. And then there's other neurochemicals, and there's heart rate, and there's breathing rates, and all these things that go along with it. But flow is an optimal consciousness, it's optimal experience. You play your best, you feel your best. And this goes beyond golf, everybody. It goes into school. It goes into, they did studies with musicians and surgeons, and it doesn't matter. We've all been in a flow state before, completely lost in the moment. That's a good place to be, okay? And that's when our critical mind shuts off, and we actually love what we're doing in that moment. It might be hard, challenging, great, but we're actually enjoying the process. We can't wait to do it again. And we're absorbed in that present moment, which is part of the focus. So flow is that optimal place. My company FlowCode, and specifically FlowCode.golf is our website. And we know that it can be trained. We now have the research to back up with the brainwave activity and the EEG monitors and heart rate monitors. We can reverse engineer of everybody has their own flow code. Some people, breathing at a certain breathing rate helps them. Other people, it's focus, it's visualization. And there's a host of other things, like all kinds of different things. But we're excited. I've been working with a lot of really, really good players. We have certified coaches in this. And so, very excited where this goes.
Yeah. So people who are interested can go to just flowcode.golf, and where do they go on the website to get started?
Yeah, so flowcode.golf, we have a ton of free information on there. We have master classes for juniors, we have master classes for coaches, and these are 30, 45-minute webinars that I've given. We have a podcast. I have a podcast myself, Flow Golf, on Apple and Spotify, and that's free also. And just get some information from there and see if there's a fit. And we certainly have online membership site. So you can learn the mental game on your own, and I do provide monthly webinars also for our members. But it's just a great place to get information and get to know a little bit more about the mental game.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up here, I've got a few questions I ask every guest I have on the podcast. So the first question is, what are some of your favorite books to recommend?
Well, if you can see me on video, I have a few. My background here, I love reading. So my favorite book is by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it has a background in neurochemistry and neuroscience, and how do we change habits, and how do we become a new person per se. And then the other one that I would highly recommend, which is The Rise of Superman by Steven Kotler. He's a flow expert, and he talked about flow in action sports, and it's a very, very cool book. So those are my big two. I could keep listing hundreds for you, but those are the big two.
Yeah. So final question is, what is one tip for junior or collegiate players you would give? If you could give one tip, what would it be?
Flow follows focus. You better be focused, everybody.
Yeah.
It all starts with what you're paying attention to this moment. And this day and age where we have cell phones and we have a lot of things that are distracting us, people's attention spans have shortened, and they have not been, they need to retrain them. So it's been proven over and over again that flow follows focus. So let's start working on some focus.
There we go. So you mentioned flowcode.golf to find your company. Where can people find you specifically on social media?
Sure. So, I'll put stuff out there every now and then. So Instagram and Facebook, it's all just my full name, Rick Sessinghaus. LinkedIn, I do some stuff too, because I do some corporate stuff. Don't do a ton on Twitter, to be honest with you, but Instagram, love to hear from you if anybody has questions. So it's my full name, Rick Sessinghaus.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rick, for taking the time to do this with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Perfect Par podcast. You can find out more about my guest in this episode and where you can find them in the episode description. You can also find out more about me and shorter podcast clips on my Instagram @carter.stroup or my Twitter @carterstroup.